poučevanje in raziskovanje je usmerjal v razvoj boljšega razumevanja in metod dela z mladostniki z resnimi motnjami v družinski terapiji ter z namenom boljše podpore tistim, ki te intervencije izvajajo. So now we come to your first lecture. The title is Strong Families, Strong Children, a comprehensive intervention program for families with aggressive children and teens. Torej, po slovensko močne družine, močni otroci, celovit intervencijski program za družine z agresivnimi otroki in najstniki. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good morning. We're very happy to be here. I want to begin by telling you a little bit about the work that we do and how we came to develop this particular program. I think the introduction indicated that both Rip and I teach at the College of William & Mary. And we do. We're both professors in the program teaching marriage and family counseling. We also teach a PhD program with a cognate or a focus in marriage and family counseling. And our work in our family therapy clinic is designed to do actually has three different agendas. The first, of course, is to provide an opportunity for our students to learn about family therapy and to begin to practice family therapy. But their work is in service to the community. The work at the College of William & Mary and the New Horizons Family Counseling Center is sponsored by school districts where teachers and school counselors witness children who are struggling in the classrooms and also know that they may be struggling with their families. And the schools refer these families to the New Horizons Family Counseling Center where we provide services for free. So we have an obligation both to teach and prepare our students to do family counseling, but we do that as an obligation to the community to provide free services to children and families who are struggling in any way. And in addition to both teaching and service, we also have an obligation to evaluate the work that we do, to try new theories, new practices, and to do research on the outcomes of our work. So this particular model that we're going to present to you today is an outcome of our study, our research, looking at best practices in the field, and trying to put together a program that we believe, through its three different components, combine to bring a particularly powerful impact, positive impact on families. So we don't focus only on children, or only on parents, or only on family therapy, but we have a triangulated, a three-tiered component that seems to meet the needs of children and families in a very positive way. So our obligation at the New Horizons Family Counseling Center is to continually provide opportunities for students to learn family therapy, provide opportunities to provide service to the community by providing family therapy, and also to add to the body of literature and research about best practices in family therapy. And we're committed to providing best practices in family therapy that are going to meet the needs of the people that we think most require it. Those are families and children who may not ever be able to afford private practice or to afford to go to specialized services. And we also want to do it in a way that is cost-effective and time-limited. That is short-term practice, shorter models, so that families can get help and then resume their lives. So we wanted to let you know a little bit about the way in which we develop these programs and how we, Rip and I, both consider our obligations and also the privilege of being professors at the College of William & Mary. It is just a real privilege and a pleasure to do the work that we do. And of course, we do have some exemplary students. So.
Can you hear me? Yes. I'm going to start my part from here and with a little story. And as Victoria told you, we both have backgrounds. One of the reasons for choosing this topic is that one of the issues that we're seeing that is of great difficulty for the families that we're working with at present is an increase in aggressive behavior. And the story I wanted to start with was a little bit about my own background with that. And it just so happened that I was a young therapist just starting out in North Carolina in the United States. And that particular state had a particular problem with aggressive behavior and thus had a very special program for aggressive children and their families. Now, as I said, I was a young therapist. And so I was asked to develop programs for these aggressive children. And at that time, and we're talking many years ago, we're talking now in the early 1980s, I designed those programs as I was taught to design those programs, and that was programs for the children themselves that excluded their families. And in fact, I was telling someone yesterday that there were these moments that I had when on occasion we'd be working with these children and a family member would come into the picture, a family member would become involved, and I would think to myself, if I could just get this father or this mother out of the way, I could really do something with this child. In other words, I saw the parent as an inconvenience because they weren't there all the time, but they wanted to pick up the child and take them home for the weekend, or they wanted to come visit the child. And when they did, of course, it created a tremendous emotional burden for the child, and that interrupted my program. And so my thoughts were, if I could just get the family not to do that, then I could really make a difference. Well, what happened with that, and I hate to say it because it gives away how old I am, is that what really changed my look, my outlook on that was that I got older. And as I got older, the young people that I was working with got older. And what I discovered was, over the years, was that the children that I thought that not just me, but that our program had fixed, weren't fixed. And in fact, they didn't end up so well. And what that really meant was that the children that we considered as a program to be our successes weren't successes, because when they grew up and went back into the system, back into the family system, that they... Can you hear me now? That was good.
I turned it off.
Oh, it's on. Can you hear me now? Okay. Well, just a little bit of background before we get to the actual program that I wanted to talk to you about. And this is really what we've seen. And you can see the World Health Organization in 2011 has defined the factors that influence youth violence right now. And as you can see, it's not a single factor. And I think in the story that I told you a few minutes ago, what I really approached those children in my early years with was looking at a single factor, the child, him or herself, and not the other factors. But what we actually have is we do have, certainly the violent or the aggressive individual is one factor, but we also have the relational factor. And particularly that's the family relationships, and that's an extremely important factor in what contributes to a child being violent or not violent. We have the community factor, and that's certainly the system of the community system that a child grows up in and his or her family grow up in. So that's the other. And then finally we have the societal factor, the greater system of the entire society in which a community and then a family and then a child reside. All of those are factors that we have to consider when we think about this issue of aggression. One of the things that I realized, it was very seductive to want to work with only the child, because it was very neat and very clean to say, this is the problem and I'll try to fix that problem. When you look at this model, it's much more difficult than that, because we're dealing with multiple factors, and so we have to address all of those. And that takes us to where we're going today. Just a little bit of factual information about the environment, the societal factors that we're working in our own state. Over the last 5 years, 86% of our public schools have reported at least one or more violent incidents in school. And that's quite impressive, unfortunately. In our own region, in a single year, we had 785 violent crimes that were committed by young people that were 17 years of age and younger. And if you look at the children in terms of their diagnoses, anxiety, depression, aggression, and disruptive mood disorders affect up to 20% of the children in our region. So we're dealing with an issue that we might call almost of epidemic proportions in our region at this point. What I learned some time ago, and I think what we're learning about working with this population in general, is that we know that the roots of violent behavior typically occur in childhood. Those who become violent as adults typically got the roots of that behavior when they were children. And of course, when you're children, the primary influence on a child in the early years is the family. And so it only makes sense that we're going to focus on the family, both in terms of understanding the problem of aggression and violence, and also intervening in that problem. We know that it's interesting that we can also know the importance of looking at family dynamics on aggressive behavior, because we've been very unsuccessful in trying to find the one thing, and research has done that for a long time, trying to find the one thing that if we can find that one thing and correct it, we won't have violence anymore. Well, we've been unable to do that. And so we tried to look at different character traits, we tried to look at different aspects of the individual, and each time we do that, we've never been able to find what we call the magic bullet. The one thing that if we just found that, it would be, we could solve this problem. It hasn't happened. That said, we then know also, we have research to say that working with the family, that interventions that strengthen the family tend to have the most impact on strengthening the children. And if we're talking about strengthening the children as one means of curbing violent behavior, then that's the direction that we want to take. But even with that, and we come from a family therapy program, even in our own program, we've come to realize that we have to look beyond just the four walls of our therapy rooms if we're actually going to address this multifaceted problem. And so that takes us to where we're going to go to talk about a program today, a special program that we've developed that hopefully broadens that perspective to address more of those different factors, and not just the individual, not just the family, but different aspects of a child and a family's environment. Okay. The last thing, just background information, is that we really like this statement, a statement that was made some time ago, but families are so complex that we can ill afford to dismiss any theoretical ideas that are available. I think when I talked to you about my early story, the only idea theoretically that I had was how to work with the child. Some years ago, then I expanded that story to include working with the family. And I think what we are now at a place in our own practice is understanding that we have to expand even beyond that. So we have to take opportunity of any opportunity or any resources that we have to expand our impact on children and families to more fully address the problem. And finally, I think that we are beginning to see that we have a willingness in our program, and I think that's one of the things that we want to impress upon you today, is the need to really take advantage of all the resources that are there to bring a child and a family's community together in any way you can to deal with a problem that's really going to require that.
This is working? Yeah. This is an introduction to the New Horizons Family Counseling Center. The New Horizons Family Counseling Center has been in existence for over 30 years. I came into the directorship of the New Horizons Family Counseling Center when I came on as a very brand new, junior, very beginning faculty member. I don't recommend that to anyone. It was a bit of an overwhelming experience, but I, like Rip, have had some significant experience in working with children and adolescents, and also in treatment foster care, in group homes for children with emotional disturbance. So I had a significant amount of experience in both individual work with children and in family work, but directing a clinic of this nature is a bit overwhelming, particularly for a brand new faculty member. But luckily, there was some structure in place, and we were able to make some really important improvements in how the organization was structured, and we continue to get support from the school systems to provide these services. It's a training site for both master's and PhD students who want to learn in couples and family therapy. It refers, all of our families come from 6 school districts that are about, I think, in about an 80 to 100 mile radius in any direction. These school districts all, I say contiguous, that is that they all share a boundary with each other, but they also represent different kinds of families and communities. 2 of those areas are urban areas, that is, they're more like a city. 3 of those areas are more like a suburb, so it has some city but also some outer-lying neighborhoods and areas. And 1 is more of a rural area, more out in the country, and actually in many ways somewhat detached from the other communities. So there are families who live outside of cities, a little more isolated, and families who live in the cities. So we have to serve many different kinds of challenges that families face. We annually serve or refer to about 350 families a year. Right now, I'm sad to say that the need is so great that we have a waiting list of about 2 or 3 months. We hope that we'll be able to work that waiting list down over the summer, when we probably will have fewer referrals over the summer months when children aren't in schools, but we have a long waiting list. And every year it is PhD and master's students who are providing those direct services. Again, these services are free. We are sponsored by the 6 school districts who offer some funding to us to allow us to operate this clinic. And the School of Education at the College of William and Mary provides the spaces with which we, the opportunity, the classrooms, the counseling rooms, and so forth. The College of William and Mary supports us to a significant degree. Our dean in particular sees the outreach that we do to the community as an obligation of the university to the community. Service to the community is part of our philosophy, and so they've been very supportive and provide lots of opportunities for us to not only continue but to improve our work. All the children, as I said before, and families are referred through the public schools. The common presenting problems are aggression, depression, anxiety, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, academic failure, and those are just among a range of concerns that are presented to us. The annual income of most of the families that we serve are at or below the poverty level. These are families who have very few resources and could not afford to receive private treatment services. These are also families that are struggling because of difficulty supporting their families, and many of them are, as I said, are barely able to make it day to day. There's significant racial and ethnic diversity in the families that we see, and there are varied family structures. Probably the single mother family structure is the one that we see most often. But there are grandparents who are caring for their grandchildren. There are aunts and uncles who are caring for children. There are blended families. Perhaps families have divorced and remarried. There are so many different family configurations. We also see a number of immigrant families, an increasing number of families who've immigrated to the United States from other countries. We see more male than female children. That is, of those who are referred to us, we have more boys than girls who are referred. That certainly is consistent with expectations related to aggressive, assaultive behavior or just behavioral difficulties in the schools. Boys are more likely to be identified as having a learning disorder or of being considered aggressive or assaultive than are girls. And so they're more likely to be identified and more likely to be referred to us. We see children anywhere from ages 7 to 17. Maybe one child is referred, but there may be 3 or 4 children in the family, so we often have families that are very large, and it may be a single mother and just one child. So we see many different types of families. And we also offer babysitting for younger children. So there are lots of students in the School of Education and other programs, and even in our programs, that are willing to provide babysitting so that if they're little bitty children who need to be cared for while the families are in our programs, then I wish we could show you some video of what that looks like. Babies that are infants, toddlers that are trying to run away. We have one child that we call the runner. She escapes at every opportunity and is running up and down the hallways while classes are in session. So she poses quite a challenge. So we try to provide services that support the families in every way. The particular program of Strong Families and Strong Children begins with 3 10-week sessions. We have one set of families that goes through one 10-week session. And they include weekly family therapy. The families who are involved come every week to family therapy. They come every week. The children go to the youth therapy group, and the adults go to the adult parent education group. And then in addition to that, we have what we call service coordination sessions. So at the end of the evening, when the parent groups and the children's groups are completed, everyone gets together who's providing these services to discuss what's happened in the children's groups and in the parents' groups, and that same information is shared with those who are providing the family therapy. So that the family therapist, the group therapist, and for the parents and the children all know what is happening in both the family therapy sessions and in each of the group sessions. That is of significant importance, so that maybe something's discussed in the family therapy session that doesn't come up in the parent group, but seems to be really important. Or maybe something's happening with the children that needs to be discussed in the family therapy program. So all these components are linked together through the service coordination sessions. Also, the notes that the therapists take in the family therapy sessions are written up and posted electronically so that those who are supervising the groups can read them. And notes about the group experiences are also posted so the family therapist can read them. So everybody is working very closely together to be coordinated in their treatment. If an issue comes up in the parent group, then it can be discussed in the family therapy group.
The only thing that I would add to that would be that it also takes a coordination between the university and our program, because, and it's kind of interesting, about 3 years ago we got a brand new building. Before that, we were in an old building that we really didn't worry about that much, but what we found, and even for those of us who have been doing this for some time, was that when we got our new building, the thought of bringing 20 physically aggressive children and teens into the building suddenly took on a new way of seeing that. We began to worry about that a little bit.
We were terrified.
In fact, that didn't turn out to be the problem, but part of that was because we were very careful in being collaborative with our university and our program officials in the School of Education where we are, to let them know what was happening, to let them know what we were doing. To give an example, and with the other faculty members, the other professors, because a great example is that Victoria's office in the old building used to have carpet on the floor, but it was all rippled, it was all messed up, and the reason for that is several children from the program went into the bathroom next to her office and thought it was really fun to put paper down the toilet and flush the toilet over and over until it flooded. And so we had a flood in the building up there. And so it takes a special understanding on the part of everyone involved to do this. So it really does take a collaborative approach.
The family therapy component? Hello? Just to describe the family therapy component of this program, weekly family therapy was provided by master's and PhD students who are in training under faculty supervision. So all these families were seen every week. The family therapy, they may well have been in family therapy before they began the three-tiered program, three-component, and the family therapy may well continue after the completion of the 10-week program. We applied what I would say is a postmodern structural family therapy model. We do focus broadly and specifically, I think, as well on structural family therapy, but we might consider it maybe a kinder, gentler structural family therapy that certainly has been adapted to fit the needs of the families that we serve. But we believe the structural family therapy model is a good one for learning family therapy and also for working with the kinds of families that we see who are so diverse. Often the family therapy is relatively short-term, 12 to 14 weeks, and we believe that this model, incorporated with good parent education, is quite a good model and has shown some significant positive outcomes. Also, the program is coordinated weekly with the group and parent education components, as I mentioned before, so that what's happening in the family therapy is either reflective or reflected of the other components. So that triangulation, that communication is crucial so that all activities in each of the three programs can be addressed in each of the 3 programs. The issues that are addressed are hierarchy related, that is that children of neglectful parents are at increased risk of excessive, including violent, responses to real and perceived life challenges. So we do focus significantly on the role of the parental hierarchy. That is, are the parents capable of functioning as parents in the household? So we focus on the hierarchy, that is, the role of parents to provide structure, to provide safety, and to provide opportunities for children to learn how to behave in appropriate ways that are healthy and provide a positive outcome in terms of psychological development. We also focus on boundaries. The model is boundary related. If parents fail to volunteer support and emotional involvement with the children, then the children really have no recourse except to engage in the kinds of behaviors that are going to force involvement of the parents. And some of that behavior could certainly be violent or aggressive behavior. So if children's needs aren't met, and if there's not adequate boundaries between the roles of parents and children, then the children are going to act out.
And I would just add to that, that one thing we see over and over again is that from a child's perspective or a teen's perspective, negative involvement from the parents, that is, acting out and being punished, is better than no involvement at all. You know, we see that a lot, so negative is better than none.
We also note that our work is alignment related. That is, we try to evaluate what is the alignment of the family structure. Generalized anxiety and insecurity in children who are pressured toward alignment with one parent renders them vulnerable to excessive, including violent responses in times of stress. So we understand essentially that when children are struggling with anger and insecurity and maybe pressured towards a particular kind of relationship with one parent or rejecting another, then they're more likely to be involved with inappropriate behaviors and potentially dangerous and violent behaviors. So what we're looking for is how can we facilitate healthy alignment with appropriate adults in the family. I also want to speak for a few minutes about the role of moral development. The most important forms of moral character formation are grounded by the prosaic interactions and transactions in daily, family, and social life of the child. That is, that how we learn to be moral beings, how we learn about what we consider just and fair from childhood into adulthood is learned within the context of day-to-day experiences with our families. And broaching issues of justice and fairness in a moral development context have been linked to really positive developmental outcomes in children. That is, they develop more appropriately and adequately as individuals throughout the life cycle. So we have taken a focus on moral development and the prosaic interactions between parent and children into account as we developed this program. That is, we want opportunities in the therapeutic context for children with each other, for parents with each other, and for the children and parents in the family therapy to explore issues that aren't specific to problems in the family, but to begin to have conversations about what happens when children might face a moral dilemma. We give them examples, offer children examples of what other problems other children might have faced, and ask the children in the family to discuss together, you know, what is the best thing to do, and what are the best reasons for making choices. So we are trying to support the opportunity not just to remediate, that is to diminish negative behavior, but to promote positive moral development within the family for children and parents as well. The interventions methods that we use broadly in our program include restructuring techniques using the structural family therapy model, conflict resolution training, and practice. Training people to do conflict resolution also necessitates the opportunities to practice those skills. Communication training. How might parents learn to better communicate with each other and with their children, and how might we promote adequate communication skills for children? And also lots of opportunities for practice. Family and community linkage. That is, what are the resources in the community that our families might need to use? What resources are in the community our families might not know about? And how might our families offer some resources to the community? Might they be able to act in positive ways in their community? And then we also integrated the moral dilemma discussions.